Hi, I'm Macaulay.
I'm Ian.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Todd.
This is our carefully crafted wind chime, which we created using the basic concepts of sound.
Today, we will enlighten the audience on the basic concepts of sound that are required to make tones pleasing to the human ear. Our goal is to make you all experts on these physics concepts of sound.
After you all become experts on these concepts, we will explain the wavelength, amplitude, crest, trough, period, frequency, and transverse and longitudinal waves, and how these concepts relate to our project, the wind chime. A change in one of these sound concepts may in turn affect each other in different ways, and this may be a hard concept to grasp at once, but we will explain more in depth later in the video.
While we can clearly define for you all the concepts of sound, we will avoid boring you by explaining these concepts through our wind chime. As aforementioned, each physics concept relies on another, and therefore the smallest change in wavelength, amplitude, or medium can ultimately have a negative effect on the sounds produced.
Sound can be defined as any pressure variation that the ear can detect, ranging from the weakest sound levels to sound levels which can damage hearing. The sounds produced by our wind chime are dictated by physics.
Which of these physics concepts affects the sound that is produced by our wind chime the most? A. Amplitude, B. Wavelength, C. Frequency, or D. Period. Now please carefully think through your answer, write it down on a piece of paper, and pass your paper to the front. You have 1 minute, and the timer starts now. Time's up.
Before we explain the answer, we will show you what your peers thought the answer might be.
Which of these physics concepts affects the sound that is produced by our wind chime the most? A. Amplitude, B. Wavelength, C. Frequency, and D. Period.
Frequency, because when I think of frequency, I think of a high-pitched noise. So a wind chime would most likely be affected by frequency.
Which of these physics concepts affects the sound that is produced by our wind chime the most? A. Amplitude, B. Wavelength, C. Frequency, or D. Period.
I would have to say it would be frequency, because the way that it works for anybody, you hear it through sound, so you have to hear it, and it's the frequency that you're allowed to hear, which would allow you to interpret the sound in some kind of way that you take it personally.
Okay, Mara, for our physics presentation, we have to ask you this following question. Which of the following physics concepts affects the sound produced by our wind chime the most? A. Amplitude, B. Wavelength, C. Frequency, or D. Period?
C.
C. Frequency?
Yes.
And why do you think that?
Because it depends on how frequently the wind chimes are hitting each other.
Makes sense. So C. Frequency is your final answer?
Final answer is C. Frequency.
So Nick, our question to you is, which of the following physics concepts affects the sound that is produced by our wind chime the most? A. Amplitude, B. Wavelength, C. Frequency, or D. Period?
Well, I feel like all those are kind of like pretty similar, so they all probably affect it a little bit. But I'd say what's doing the most chiming of the wind chimes would be the wind itself, because hot air rises, cold air comes to the bottom. The wind starts coming like this and gets a little curves from the Coriolis effect. So the wind chimes start chiming. And pretty soon you got a beautiful sound being made from all of those products essentially that are being produced by the wind itself.
Which of the following physics concepts affects the sound produced by our wind chime the most? A, amplitude, B, wavelength, C, frequency, or D, period?
Well, very interesting question, guys, and I'm glad that you actually asked me in particular about this question. So we are doing amplitude, frequency, period, and
Wavelength.
wavelength. And it has to affect the what? The sound?
That is produced by our wind
The
chime.
greatest? How do you quantify what has the greatest change? How would you quantify whether the amplitude has a more change? Am I allowed to talk about this?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah. How am I supposed to how do you quantify which is? Do you have any basis for that? No. Okay. Well, then I'll just say what I think affects the wave.
Okay.
And I should know this, but I actually don't, so I'm literally going to have to kind of guess. I think amplitude definitely would, and frequency, but other than that, I like period, as far as I'm aware, is I don't know. I'll just go with amplitude and frequency.
So you think that both of them would affect the sound?
Yes, I know they would.
That was good. Trick question. The answer is all of the above. And more. As aforementioned, each and every physics concept related to sound can be directly influenced by one another. For example, the longest pipe on our wind chime sounds different than the rest of the pipes due to the difference in length. Despite all of the pipes being made of the same material and having the same diameter, all of them sound different. This shows that something as small as a change in the length of the pipe can ultimately affect all other concepts of sound. In classical music from Western culture, a third is a musical interval encompassing 3 staff positions. While making our wind chime, we use the major third frequency ratio to create the different lengths of the pipes. Creating the different frequencies is so easy it hurts. To make the major third frequency, you take the length of the first pipe and divide it by 1.25 to the 1/2 power to make the length of the next pipe, and so on. As the length of the pipe increases, the distance the sound needs to travel also increases. An increase in distance will result in an increase in velocity. An increase in velocity will therefore result in an increase in frequency and/or wavelength. As frequency increases, amplitude decreases, and will therefore result in a lower crest and a higher trough. Hey, are you paying attention? Now we will explain these concepts and equations through our wind chime, as opposed to just defining them. When looking at our wind chime, the only obvious difference is the length of each pipe. This difference may lead you to believe that length is the only thing that affects the sound produced. However, the length affects each and every concept as proven by the formulas we just showed you. Throughout the course of this video, you have learned about the basic concepts of physics that affect the sound produced by our wind chime. These concepts include wavelength, amplitude, frequency, crest, trough, and period. Hopefully, you are now able to better understand these physics concepts, and maybe one day you can make a wind chime of your own. Now, we have a rap for you to enjoy. Thanks for listening. This is our wind chime. Da-na-na. We use the basic concepts of physics to create our wind chime. First we use amplitude, then we use velocity, and frequency, and period, and wavelength. When you change the frequency, you can affect the amplitude. When you change the wavelength, you can affect the velocity. And when you change the period, you can also affect the velocity. So as you can see, if you change one, all are affected. If you change velocity, frequency is affected. If you change amplitude, period is affected. And if you change wavelength, frequency is affected.